Hi, I'm back. So, the first thing that I want to explain to you that I didn't know a lot about and I didn't understand. So, those who have gone to medical school may understand this a little bit better. Maybe you understand this, but I did not. So, I just want to kind of go over this first. There are five main hormones that are responsible for a wide range of the bodily functions in a woman. Now, I'm ADHD and I don't remember all of this, and I'm not going to put a teleprompter up, so I have all of my notes, and I'm just going to read from my notes because this is what I've learned. And actually, I'm going to be transposing this into a book so I can have this available for my daughter-in-law to be someday, or even my granddaughters, because they need to have this information. And maybe there will be new information that comes out, but the information that I'm about to give you is what the hormones are for women and what it is that they're responsible for. So this is what I've got. So these five hormones are the ones that are responsible for a wide range of bodily functions, particularly related to the reproductive system, and they are estrogen, progesterone, the luteinizing hormone, or known as LH, the follicle stimulating hormone, which is also known as FSH, and testosterone. Now, in my notes, I wrote a lot of abbreviations of the LH and the FSH, so if when I'm talking I don't fully say out luteinizing hormone or follicle stimulating hormone, just kind of fill in the blank. So here's kind of the explanation of what each of these hormones does in our bodies. So estrogen is the primary female sex hormone, and this is mainly produced by the ovaries. This is crucial for sexual and reproductive development, menstrual cycle regulation, and overall health. So I'm going to kind of go over those really quick. So in your sexual and reproductive development, it's responsible for the development of the female secondary sexual characteristics during puberty. Secondary meaning breast growth, the widening of your hips, and the starting of your menstrual cycle. It also it's responsible for menstrual cycle regulation. It works to thicken the lining of your uterus, your endometrium, that is what the lining of your uterus is called, in the first half of your cycle. And we'll get into the first and second half of your cycle and how it's broken up into 4 sections. And then your overall health. Estrogen supports bone strength, cardiovascular health, mood, and brain function, and skin elasticity. Now, this is just a very short overview of what it does. We'll get into it a little bit more as we go. So the second of those 5 hormones is progesterone. Progesterone is primarily produced by the corpus luteum, which is a temporary structure in the ovary or after ovulation, and the placenta during pregnancy. So its main functions are preparing for pregnancy, supporting pregnancy, and menstrual cycle regulation. So progesterone thickens and maintains the uterine lining to prepare it for the implantation of a fertilized egg. Okay. Then it also supports pregnancy. If conception occurs, progesterone levels remain high to prevent the uterus from contracting, so keeping its shape, and helps to sustain the pregnancy. And then the menstrual cycle regulation is if the pregnancy does not occur, you don't get pregnant that month, the drop in progesterone levels actually triggers the shedding of the uterine lining, resulting in menstruation or you bleeding and getting rid of that lining. So the LH, which is called the luteinizing hormone, it is produced by the pituitary gland in the brain. Okay? It works closely with the FSH to regulate the menstrual cycle. So luteinizing hormone, or LH, is an ovulation trigger, and a corpus luteum formation is responsible for corpus luteum formation. Now, granted, I was not trying to get pregnant, so these terms I wasn't paying too much attention to, but I was still writing these down. A surge in your luteinizing hormone levels at mid-cycle around day 14 when you ovulate of a typical 28-day cycle triggers the release of a mature egg from the ovary, thus ovulation. The corpus luteum formation. After ovulation, the luteinizing hormone stimulates the ruptured follicle to develop into the corpus luteum, which then produces progesterone. And then number 4 is known as FSH, the follicle stimulating hormone. FSH is also produced by the pituitary gland. Its role includes follicle growth and estrogen production. So they're all kind of interconnected in some way or another. The FSH stimulates the growth and development of ovarian follicles, which contain immature eggs at the beginning of the menstrual cycle. So it holds on to your immature eggs at the very beginning of your cycle. And also it promotes the secretion of estrogen by those developing follicles. So as it's stimulating the growth and development of these follicles, it also promotes the secretion of estrogen to help these follicles along. And then the 5th one is testosterone. This is the one that's really overlooked a lot, especially because we have so many doctors that are afraid that people are going on them for the wrong reasons, or even, you know, the medical community is like, well, no, testosterone's only for men. No, women have testosterone too. So testosterone, while often considered a male hormone, I kind of prefaced myself, women also produce testosterone in their ovaries and their adrenal glands though in much, much smaller amounts. But it's important for libido and sex drive, bone and muscle health, energy and mood. So so testosterone plays a key role in female sexual desire and functionality. The zing, the tingle, the want, the drive for it. Bone and muscle health, it contributes to maintaining bone density and muscle strength, and also helps regulate your energy and your mood levels. So testosterone is really, really important, and I'm super excited to start mine in about a week. But like I said, I really wanted to get my estrogen and my progesterone down pat. So now that we understand or know what it is that these 5 particular hormones do, I want to tell you about the first and second half of your month or of your menstruating cycle and how it is broken up into 4 different sections. So if you can think of a calendar, just think of your regular desktop calendar, and you've got the 4 weeks of the month. And say, for instance, on the first day of that month, and that first week, you start to menstruate, okay? So that very first day of menstruation, that is considered, the first day that you start bleeding is considered the first day of your cycle. I always thought that it was before that. So just so you know, that very first day that you start bleeding is the first day of your full 28-day cycle. It is also the first half, if you think about those, that calendar cut in half, those first 2 weeks, that is also considered the follicular phase, okay? So your menstruation phase is that first week, right? Day 1 through 7. And it is basically the beginning of the very first day you bleed and going through the whole finish of the bleed. And some women, they bleed for a couple of days. Some women, they bleed for a whole week. Regardless, this is your menstruation phase. Then that second week is considered your follicular phase. Again, you're still in the second half of that month, but it is the second week. It is day 8 through 14 of your cycle, if you're regular, okay? And this is still considered the follicular phase, but it is the second week, right? So this is also still in the first half of the 28-day cycle. And this is when your ovaries are maturing the follicular ovum. So this is when it is really maturing that egg and it's getting ready to release, okay? Then you go into the second half of your month. The second half of your month is called the luteal phase. But that third week in particular is called ovulation, the ovulation phase. And this can go between the 15th day and the 21st day. And right now is basically when your ovaries release the ovum, the egg, and it flows down into the uterus and tries to attach itself. Then you have the 4th week, or the very end of your 28-day cycle. It is still considered the second half of the month, the luteal phase, but it is called the luteal. So this is the 4th week, is the luteal phase. And this is day 22 through 28. And this is the time where you are getting ready to, your body is going, yeah, there's no pregnancy here. We're going to get rid of this. This is no longer, this whole shebang is no longer necessary. So again, looking at a calendar, you split that up between the follicular phase and the luteal phase, the first and second half. But the 4 different weeks go from menstruation, follicular, ovulation, and then luteal. So those are your phases. So understanding what those particular phases are and what phase you're in makes an enormous difference, because you have the ability to look ahead and plan ahead, or at least go, oh, what week am I in? Oh, that is why I am feeling like absolute crap right now. Or, man, what week am I in? Man, I'm feeling great. I'm feeling strong. So getting that down pat and understanding that is super, super duper important. So I want so badly to be an overachiever and make my own little like graphics and stuff like that, but that is just not who I am right now. It may be who I am later when I'm able to get my, feet underneath me. But the next thing, I'm just going to go with the flow, because ADHD, I may be off on a different subject later. But right now I'm on this. So let's talk about each of these phases and exactly what's going on in each of the phases, because I gave you a little bit of, just a little snippet of what's happening, the headline to what's going on, but let's talk a little deeper about what's actually happening in your body. So the first week, that first week where you're bleeding, and then you're kind of tapering off, during the menstruation phase, all 4 of your hormones, and I don't include testosterone in this because testosterone, I'm taking the sexual libido and I'm taking that out of it. I just want to know what's going on with me biologically. So I don't talk a lot about testosterone in here, but I will be later once I'm on it and I can really say for sure what's going on. But all 4 of those main hormones, the FSH, the LH, the estradiol, and the P progesterone, are at their lowest levels. So the FSH and the LH levels, they start low, and then they begin to rise as your menstruation period ends. And then the follicular phase then begins. While your estrogen and progesterone levels remain low until the end of the follicular phase, when estrogen begins to rise again. So then you're going into, from that week, right, into the follicular phase. So during the follicular phase, which is your second week, your FSH is moderately high. And that's in order to stimulate the follicle growth. The LH is low at the start, but then rises. And the estrogen is low initially, but then rises significantly while the progesterone remains low. The increasing estradiol levels, or the estrogen levels, are a key driver and eventually is leading to an LH surge that then triggers the ovulation at the end of the phase. And I'm sure that this explanation is as clear as mud. But if you're able to follow along and take notes, or at least it'll give you a jumping point to understanding what is actually happening and how the hormones are going up and down. During your ovulation, so this is the 3rd week of that phase, during your ovulation, the LH and the estrogen levels are at their peak, while FSH is at its peak or has a small increase. It's really up there, but maybe ticks up just a little bit more. Progesterone is beginning to rise, and the high LH surge triggered by the peak in estrogen is causing then the egg to be released. And then, of course, our 4th and final week and phase of our cycle is the luteal phase, and the FSH and the LH levels are very low. The progesterone and estrogen are very high, and then they fall pretty dramatically late in this phase, especially if pregnancy doesn't occur. If pregnancy does occur, then they drop down and then they level out. And pregnancy is a whole different can of worms, but if we're in perimenopause, we are not trying to get pregnant. So something that I learned, is there is another kind of cousin hormone, which is called, prostaglandin. I don't know if I said that right or not. But it is another hormone that is specifically for the shedding of your uterine lining. And it kind of helps with this. Shedding the uterine lining. So I am going to mention that in here. I don't want you to get too confused. But during your menstruation, right, your menstruation phase, the drop in estrogen and progesterone leads to symptoms like cramps, mood swings, and fatigue. Estrogen's decline can cause low mood, while the prostaglandin, increase during uterine lining shedding and is linked to cramps and pain. Progesterone's fall, or the decrease in progesterone, can also contribute to irritability and fatigue. During menstruation, your estrogen drops significantly at the start of the menstrual phase. So your symptoms for this can be, it can contribute to mood swings, irritability, and feeling of sadness, because of its effects on serotonin. And we all know that serotonin is a mood regulating hormone. So estrogen really, really is a conductor of that. So, you know, any of us who have gone through and felt super sad or super upset or unloved, or just everything is just, you know, crap, it's because the estrogen is not there to conduct where serotonin goes. Progesterone, it also declines fairly sharply at the luteal phase, or as the luteal phase ends and you are in menstruation. And the symptoms for this can lead to worsening symptoms like mood swings and irritability. So you're already sad and you're already upset, and then you don't have the ability to manage or regulate, and you just get a little bit more tense, a little bit more irritable. We all know what that is, right? So I put a note down here that prostaglandins are these hormone-like, okay, so they're not a hormone, but they're hormone-like lipids that increase as the uterine lining sheds. So it's there to help shed the lining. The symptoms of this, of this increase, let's see, this actually is the continued cause and the primary cause of the menstrual cramps by causing the uterus to contract, as well as contributing to other pains like headaches and muscle aches. So the prostaglandins is basically the hormone-like lipid that is the primary cause for the actual pain that you feel when you have your menstruation cramps, because it is what's helping kick out that uterine wall to menstruate it and to help you contract and get that out. So then you're in pain. So hopefully you are still with me on this. We're at 20 minutes. So obviously, menstruation comes with a ton of other symptoms. Fatigue caused by blood loss and the body's inflammatory response during your menstrual cycle. Bloating occurs because the body retains more water and salt due to the hormone shifts. Breast tenderness, hormonal changes make breasts feel swollen and tender. Headaches and muscle aches linked to hormonal changes and the prostaglandins. And then moderate or mood-related symptoms like mood swings, irritability, and change in appetite are common due to the combined drop of estrogen and progesterone. So it is a complete and utter shit show when we are menstruating and going through all of this, because all of our hormones are just going, and we feel like that mentally. Okay, so during the follicular phase, so that's the second week, and again, this is the second week that's still in that the first half of your month or your 28-day cycle. During the follicular phase, rising estrogen levels are associated with increased energy, improved mood, mental focus, and changes in cervical mucus to a more slippery and egg white type of consistency. Conversely, while still in this phase, initial symptoms from your menstrual phase, like bloating or breast tenderness, may still be present. So your FSH hormone triggers follicle development and then a rise in your estrogen, subsequently preparing the uterine lining, and increases your libido. So have you ever gotten right off of your period and then you're starting to feel okay? You're starting to feel like you could get some stuff done. You're kind of getting back into the swing of things. Maybe you're getting a little bit, riled up when you're around your partner or whatever. So what's going on here is that estrogen is really doing a lot of things. It's increasing your energy and your focus. So higher estrogen levels boosts vitality, and it leads to more energy and improved mental clarity. An improved mood. The higher your estrogen goes, it enhances your mood and reduces your anxiety. Clearing skin. Estrogen balances skin oils, leading to clearer, brighter skin for some, not everybody, but most of the people that I've like come across or I've heard talk or whatever says that when they're in this follicular phase, they feel like their skin looks the best, or is beginning to look good. You have increased libido. Hormonal changes can subtly increase your sex drive as the body prepares for ovulation again. Because remember, this entire phase is for procreation. This whole mechanism is for procreation. So it's a whole cycle. You're trying to get ready to have a baby, so we're going to get in the mood, and then we're going to have sex, and then we're going to have, ovulation. We're going to fertilize that egg. It's a whole cycle. So this is about the time where your body starts to go, a little something, something. So also your cervical mucus changes, and it becomes more plentiful and slippery. And then breast tenderness. Some people still have residual breast tenderness or swelling as the estrogen levels rise and as you're coming out of your menstrual phase. And I don't know about you, but I always tend to have breast tenderness no matter what I do. There's always some part of my cycle that I'm just like, that kind of sucks. And again, everybody is a little different. So let's talk about the falling estrogen. During the follicular phase, the second week, lingering period symptoms as the phase transitions to ovulation. The effects of the menstrual phase may still be felt. I think I already said that, so that's kind of a reiteration. You still may be feeling those symptoms through all the way to the end of the first week. going into your follicular phase and through. And that just depends on, like, I think that if you have PCOS or endometriosis, that might be a little bit harder to recover from after you're done from your menstrual cycle. So let's talk about ovulation. So during ovulation, a surge in estrogen causes increased libido and changes in cervical mucus, and potentially breast tenderness and mood elevation. The subsequent drop in estrogen and rise in progesterone as the ovulatory phase ends can lead to symptoms like headaches, fatigue, bloating, and mood changes, such as irritability or anxiety. The LH hormone, which triggers ovulation, can also be linked to a slight increase in body temperature. And sometimes pains can be temporarily felt or spotting can occur at the moment of ovulation and egg release. Now, I have a little thing. I have always been able to feel my ovulation, and like as far as I can remember. And sometimes it's just a knowing and a little cramping and a little, I don't feel so good, to full on contractions. And so when I went to go have my son and contractions started, I was like, yeah, I've experienced this before. This sucks, but it's no big deal. Like, I already had experienced contractions because it's what happened and still does sometimes happen to me when I'm ovulating. My cervix will begin to hurt or ache. I can't sit down. It takes like about an hour. And it just doesn't feel good, and then it just goes away. So, the whole process is done. And I was really, really excited to find that there's actually a word for it. And I didn't know that. I was just saying, I can feel my ovulation, because that's what I was guessing, and I was very in tune with my body. But there's actually a word for it, and we'll get to that. So, during your ovulation phase, your estrogen fluctuates. It's not rising, it's not falling, it's just doing this whole wiggle waggle. So you have some physical symptoms. You have increased cervical mucus. It becomes like more clear and stretchy. There's changes in the cervical position and the firmness. And let's see, breast tenderness and heightened sense of smell, taste, and sight. This, so like emotional and behavioral symptoms are here. Increased libido and sex drive, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point, and potential mood elevation. This third week is when you're going to be raring to go. Your body is going to be really like on top of things. You're going to feel great. You're going to feel sexy. You're going to feel more engaged to be intimate. So as you're going through your ovulation, post-ovulation, so at the very, very end of that third week, progesterone fluctuations happen. So that then starts with mild bloating, headaches, fatigue, mild cramps, and I can never say this, but this is the name of what it was feeling your ovulation. Mittelschmerz, the ovulation pain, Mittel Schmerz, Mittelschmerz. It's got to be. That sounds like it's got to be like, I don't know, German or whatever. And this can be felt on one side or the lower abdomen. And you can have sometimes light spotting. I have definitely had one time where, or not one time, but where I'll have like one little spot when I'm going to the bathroom and I'm like, oh, okay. But it doesn't stay. And then of course, mood swings, irritability, or anxiety start to ramp up at the very end or sliding into the fourth week, which is the luteal phase. So the luteal phase is that primary, or the phase where the primary hormones, what do I have here? During the luteal phase, the primary hormones are progesterone. Okay. Good thing I reset that because, punctuation and stuff matters. So progesterone is dominant, and estrogen, which initially rises and then drops. I need to restate that. During the luteal phase, the primary hormones are progesterone, which is dominant, and estrogen, which then initially rises and then drops. I can't read my own handwriting. The fluctuating levels cause symptoms like breast tenderness, mood swings, fatigue, bloating, cravings, particularly as progesterone levels increase to prepare the body for potential pregnancy, and then drop if pregnancy does not occur. So this is our PMS phase, right? This is where everything's going all wackadoo, and we're getting ready to go into, again, the first week, the menstruation phase. Hormonal fluctuations and associated symptoms. So with progesterone dominant symptoms, you get breast tenderness. It can make your breast feel swollen, heavy, and tender. You get bloating, which can be due to water retention causing bloating and digestive changes. Fatigue. Increased levels of progesterone can contribute to the feeling of tiredness. Food cravings. This hormone can lead to increased appetite, cravings, especially for carbohydrates. So almost, and we'll get into how to eat for each of these phases, but especially carbohydrates when you're PMSing, which, isn't really much of a surprise. You also have more of a chance to get headaches because it triggers, it triggers dehydration in your brain. And also acne. Progesterone can increase sebum. Sebum is the oily stuff on your skin. Sebum production, which may lead to acne and breakouts. So if you're now being an esthetician, I know that sebum has this tendency, if it is released very quickly and it becomes thicker, which progesterone thickens the sebum, it is easier to clog in the pores, and it comes out faster, so there isn't enough time for it to fully just be secreted, and so it gets clogged, and then you have acne. And that's what happens is, the progesterone just makes the oil in your skin come out faster and be thicker, and it gets clogged, and then you've got your hormonal pimples. And anybody who's ever had hormonal pimples will tell you that for some reason they hurt more than regular pimples. And it's just because they're backed up and they come hard and fast. So we are still talking about the luteal phase, which is that final week in your cycle. But now let's talk about how, we already talked about progesterone, but let's talk about how estrogen rises and then completely tanks as that phase ends. So with that, with your mood tanking, or with your estrogen tanking, so does your mood and your libido and a whole other slew of things. So you have the initial rise and then dramatic drop in estrogen significantly impacts mood, which then it leads to irritability, anxiety, sadness, and temporary depression. The overall, with estrogen, again, the overall hormone shift and the tank of this is majoritively associated with low sex drive. But with fluctuations, there are some fluctuations that have been known to have a small libido surge. Again, that's, I've had that happen maybe every 4 or 5 months, where I'll have a little bit of an uptick in my libido while I'm PMSing. But it's not very common, but it does happen. Other symptoms that you get, menstrual cramps and pelvic floor pain as the body prepares for menstruation, which can involve cramping. And it depends on however month to month and person to person, but this can be mild to extreme, is menstruation cramps and pelvic pain. Again, people with endometriosis, PCOS, they have a little bit more of an extreme issue at this point. You have emotional and physiological effects from estrogens tanking out, anxiety, inability to focus, irritability, sensitivity to rejection are common. And this is where, this is a big, big one right here for those who are already ADHD and already dealing with symptoms of RSD. So, you know, this will absolutely amplify your RSD, your normal state RSD when you are in a PMS. It will. It's skyrocket. I don't know about you, but it makes it skyrocket. And then other physical symptoms of your estrogen declining is, you know, we already talked about acne, changes in your vaginal discharge. It could become a little more like yellow or sticky or mucousy, or even smelly. And an elevated basal body temperature. So we tend to rise and fall in our body temperature. Everybody does, but us in particular during certain phases of the month as our body is getting used to or rejecting pregnancy. So, we have gone through so much and, that is, I want to stop there. Just because, you know, the next things are like, I want to go over exactly, you know, what these roles of the hormones do a little bit more in depth. Because each of these hormones really have, especially estrogen, man, estrogen really, really has a hold on all of the things. And if you are feeling depressed, or if you're feeling like, you know, your passions for, like, your zest for life has diminished, or your libido is gone, or your happiness has been stolen, or your magic, like I used to call it, my magic is gone. It is so very controlled by these hormones, especially estrogen. And once you start to understand what estrogen and these other hormones really control and are responsible for, it makes it a whole lot easier to be able to, while you're going through your phases, go, oh my gosh, I'm in this particular phase, my estrogen is tanked. I need to stop trying. I need to not go and try on clothes this week. I need to take care of myself and eat this way and support my body this week. I need to not have that conversation with this person this week because I know that I don't have the ability to regulate my emotions. I know that I don't have the ability to have mental clarity. Again, I have found that learning these things has made it easier for me to be able to really plan ahead for what I'm about to do. That doesn't mean that it's always perfect, but again, if you're ADHD and you're in the moment of something in your hormonal, you might be able to go like, oh, okay, I know that my estrogen is probably pretty low and I'm probably overreacting a little bit and it feels like it hurts, but maybe it wasn't meant that way. And it just gives you and arms you with a little bit more information so you can self-regulate and understand yourself better. So yeah, so I'm really excited to be able to share this with you. I shared this all with my girlfriend the other day, and she didn't know most of this stuff. And it's not because she's not a smart woman. She's incredibly intelligent, but it's just not something that we're taught or that we are given the information for. So I'm trying to put it all together in the ways that I learned it, wrote it down, and can go back and go, oh my gosh, okay, what was going on during that particular phase? Because you're not going to know it right away. And you may not need to completely memorize all of this stuff, but it's good to have reference to go back to and just have the knowledge, the basic outline of the knowledge. So when you're going forward, you're not completely lost. So that's it. I hope to talk to you soon, and I hope that you enjoyed this. Let me know if there's anything that you want me to cover later on, or if you have any added information that maybe I messed up on or could add to. Just let me know. So I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I hope that this was helpful. I'll talk soon, and see you later.